This is episode 300, and I think this is our 9th season. Today, we want to talk about a very common issue that we have with probably about a third of our clients and patients that have come in over the years, and that's acid reflux. So, people have this burning sensation, and it just feels this tightness in their throat, sometimes just in their chest, and sometimes they have like little quick fixes and it goes away. It's not uncommon to have like a little bit here and there throughout your life, but it's chronic that we always care about, right? Anything that's chronic is what are you doing to cause these problems? So what you eat, drink, breathe, rub on your skin, how you stress, all things that you get to control. So with reflux, we care about the GERD, or the gastroesophageal reflux, or the long-term chronicity of this. And I don't know, about 14% of the world's population has reflux, probably most in industrial countries because of what triggers this. And then in the US, though, it is double that rate. It's about a third of the entire population has reflux. I think 40%, if I remember right, have silent reflux. So a lot of people don't even know this is going on, but a third are diagnosed with it. And this becomes a chronic issue for a lot of people that can really disrupt sleep and their life. How many of you guys have already had reflux before, like at least one episode? Man, it'll floor you sometimes, right? If I eat crap, I notice once in a while I can trigger that reflux. But overall, if you eat healthy and have a lifestyle that's consistent with life longevity, you don't. So think about that, like a third of the population for one condition. So, not to mention, we can throw in like eosinophilic esophagitis, which is just swelling in the throat from this, or very similar issues with this, gastroparesis, heartburn. What are some other things here? Usually just, it can go all the way to where you have Barrett's esophagus, which is precancerous. So we don't want to mess around with this for too long. We really just don't want to have reflux. Now, traditionally, just like everything else, the goal is always management, supplement management, or medication management. Usually medication management, right? So that's traditionally the solution you're going to get is, doc, what causes reflux? I don't know, acid, let's just shut off your acid. Well, how long do I have to do that for? For life. But there is some significant complications and some considerations that are pretty dire when you start taking the medications for even short periods of time. So we want to talk about a little bit about what causes it, kind of what the mechanism is, the drugs, why they're so risky long-term, and then even talking about some natural options, and then talking about what we would do really with functional lifestyle medicine, how we would just long-term fix this problem, right? That's always our goal. So at the Genomic Wellness Group, the whole purpose is functional lifestyle medicine. Know what's causing the problem, and then teach people to stop causing the problem. So knowing is the hard part for a lot of people. Most people have no idea what is actually triggering this, and there's books and all kinds of experts on this, even in natural medicine, but they're way off target. So when you look at these issues, so basically when you look at your kind of structures, right? So we want to know how things work normally, and you have your esophagus. Mouth goes down to that tube. That tube has a big old fist muscle in there called the cardiac sphincter or lower esophageal sphincter. That goes to a bag called your stomach, which is full of acid and enzymes. At the bottom of that bag, there's another muscle, and that muscle is the pyloric sphincter. So the muscle on the top and the muscle on the bottom of that stomach is what keeps acid from going up and down in there. Then at the bottom of that, you have the small intestine, and about the first 18 inches is where you have about 80% of your absorption. So the goal is to macroly chomp food up then go to the stomach. The acid enzymes break everything up into the smallest particles, so that way you can absorb 80% of those nutrients in the next 18 inches in the small intestine or the duodenum. Then over the next 20 feet, it's just slow absorption. And when you look at nutrition, right, just because you put something in your mouth does not mean it ever goes into the body. So you can take the mouth to the anus, squish that tube together, and it's a donut. Just because you put something in the donut doesn't mean it gets broken down and absorbed into the donut. So you can swallow rocks or strings and poop those out, or marbles. You're not going to digest those things. So the first concern is, are those things actually broken down? So that means we need to have acid enzymes. And so while, say, a third of Americans are having reflux, or 40% are having silent reflux, that's not normal. It's not because of acid, right? Every single animal on this planet has acid in their stomach and enzymes, and they don't have reflux. The majority of the entire world population doesn't have reflux. But Americans, we create these sudden epidemics based on our lifestyle. What we eat, drink, breathe, rub on our skin, and how we stress. All things we get to control. So what happens with this is you eat the food, it goes down into the stomach, it's broken down into the smallest parts. And as it goes down, your muscle relaxes at the top of the stomach. The bottom one's tight, top one relaxes. Then the food goes into the stomach acid and enzymes. This gets tight again. And this is tight and this is tight. And the stomach just works like a little washing machine, agitating all that and breaking everything down into the smallest amounts. It also, the acid oxidizes the iron so it can be more absorbable for you. It breaks down calcium, magnesium, so you build bones and muscles, and you have good hormone balance with that stuff. All those extra benefits of magnesium, of sleeping better and feeling better. As it breaks down all those nutrients and kills all the bad bacteria and viruses and foodborne illnesses, then the top one gets super tight. The bottom one, the pyloric sphincter, gets loose. And then the stomach wrings down all that food and acid into the small intestine. And then immediately the small intestine buffers that acid. So again, don't worry about pH, don't worry about acid or acidic foods. That is never the problems, right? A lot of the acidic foods are actually healing for you, but because there's acid in there, that's acidic, and so then they blame more acidic stuff, as if lemons are the thing that's causing your reflux, right? No, definitely not it. But it makes sense, it sells books, but it's not real. Now, then all those nutrients get absorbed like we talked about. Now, after that's done, they both get tight and they wait for the next meal. If acid squirts up past this muscle, the cardiac sphincter, it will burn the hell out of the esophagus. But it is not acid that's the problem. It's why is that muscle not as tight as it should be? And this is the key thing of how you reverse this for the rest of people's lives, right? Through functional lifestyle medicine. Know how things work, know what we do to mess it up, teach people to stop messing it up. So what messes this up? Well, you have two nerves that come to this muscle to control it. The first one is the parasympathetic nerve. That's from the brainstem. That's autonomic. You don't control that stuff. That runs everything from your mouth to your anus, your heart, lungs, all your intestines and kidneys and all that function. It's housekeeping. Parasympathetics do your job. Be tight when you're supposed to, loosen when you're supposed to. But you also have a nerve called the sympathetic nerve. And if you open your chest up, pull the lungs out, you'll see a little chain of pearls, and those are your sympathetic nerves. So those actually can innervate the same organs and the same muscles. So parasympathetic, my heart beats 60 to 100 beats per minute. Sympathetic, my heart beats 150, 200 beats per minute, right? So sympathetic is overdrive. Sympathetic interferes with the parasympathetics. So that's where it's always good, again, the mindful kind of practices and yoga, meditation, power posing, all those things that we talk about with clients all the time. But America's the #1 country for anxiety and depression. We are the most anxious and sympathetic driven population. So that nerve actually loosens that the cardiac sphincter so that acid can squirt up. Now, it's not full blown, it's just little bits of sympathetic nerve stimulation. So that's a little bit of stress, which we talked about, right? But what are the other real main triggers? Not the bull crap ones that sound right, but what are the actual ones that we can actually change and modify and ensure that we don't have reflux anymore? The first one is always sugar. Sugar is basically crack, and if you take crack, you're gonna have reflux. So sugar is a sympathetic stimulator. Now, wheat and dairy are big time causes of this. I cannot tell you how many people that is just those three things that just really gets rid of most of them from the start, right? That's why I love my job. Just tell people stop causing problems and their problems go away, which is super easy and nice. Makes my job easy. So wheat and dairy are morphine, right? Wheat has morphine. Dairy has 4 different types of morphine. And usually wheat, dairy, and sugar are always together. So cake and ice cream, mac and cheese. So not only do we have chronic stress, but now we have a third of our diet should be causing reflux with that, with just those categories. Now, if you look at nitrates in processed meats, those nitrates, even if they're naturally occurring from celery juice and celery powder and what's the other one that they always say? Sea salt now, to preserve processed meats. So that's a whole different topic we'll talk about later. But that nitrate not only causes leukemia and lymphoma, but it actually stimulates your sympathetic nerves. So deli meat should cause reflux. Not to mention they put gluten in deli meat, which should cause that, which is the same as bread, right? Then sulfites. Sulfites are added to things like American wine. So not naturally occurring sulfites. We want added sulfites to derive this sympathetic response to cause reflux. So American wines, Chinese food sometimes, and then some processed foods will have sulfites. And that is an easy trigger for that. So sulfites, nitrates, wheat, dairy, sugar. Then MSG, which not only decreases brain neurite growth by 8,000%, but it actually has been shown by MIT published research that it kills brain cells instantly once it crosses the blood-brain barrier. So sure, it dumbs us down and shrinks our brain, but it also contributes to reflux, that sympathetic drive. Chocolate will do that, but most chocolate is just sugar milk, so it's just crack and morphine, and so that's fine. But even people that do 100% cacao, it can actually trigger that sympathetic nerve and cause reflux. That's probably the rarest one that we ever see, but we've seen it. And then there is food sensitivities. Now, food sensitivities, we actually look at these a little different. We do these all the time. It is one of the most profound ways to really figure out what's going on with people, because you have certain foods that trigger histamine responses, like dramatic histamine responses. And then we call that eosinophilic esophagitis, or just it's just T cell dysregulation and molecular mimicry, which we always talk about when patients or clients come in for the first time. Now, those, you just do a blood test, you put the food antigen with your blood, which has T memory cells, B memory cells, which again, this is a whole different other discussion. But if your body has misidentified a food as a pathogen, which is called doppelganger molecular mimicry, well, now every time you eat that food, it triggers this immune reaction, which includes a huge histamine response. And depending on whether it's H1 to H9, there's different reactions. A big chunk of that are food sensitivity induced reflux. And since people only eat 16 different foods within a year, you're probably just eating the same stuff over and over, and then you have chronic sympathetic response that leads to the reflux. So then we call it GERD, right? So now it's a disease, but you're just triggering it. So food sensitivities are great, but you got to do them correctly, and you got to know what the hell they're doing. Like, not all doctors do this the right way, which is stupid messed up for clients. But if you do it correctly, you can then sometimes just dramatically fix all autoimmune conditions the same way, which we'll talk about later. So if you look at that and say, could it be something that I'm eating or stressing? So wheat, dairy, sugar, MSG, nitrates, sulfites, food sensitivities. Yeah. Now nicotine will do this too. Nicotine stimulates that sympathetic response, and high caffeine. So some people can't function without 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cups of coffee or energy drinks. So sure, Bang soda has 300 milligrams caffeine, but a blonde grande I think has 325. It only takes 250 to cause anxiety. So even that energy drink or even that venti mocha at Starbucks will trigger that sympathetic response too. So what we eat, what we drink, and how we stress. So they all are stimulating it. And all we're finding with any kind of chronic condition is, what's your breaking point? How much of each of those things can you do before you get a symptom? So all we're doing with our diet and lifestyle is we're part of this 350 million guinea pig experiment. How many of each of those things does it take before you interfere with that sympathetic or parasympathetic response of the cardiac sphincter? So that's all it is. So what we do is then systematically go through your diet and lifestyle and make all these changes, and then make sure it goes away and stays away, so you don't have to have that anymore, because you definitely don't want Barrett's esophagus or esophageal cancer or things that are going to really disrupt the quality of your life and your sleep. So that's how it should be done. Now, what most people do, just so you know, there's medications for this, and there's supplements for this. Now, medications, typically it's antacids. So because it's acid, if we do a buffer, then we can buffer out that acid and it doesn't hurt so bad. Does that fix the problem? No. Does it make more tolerable? Hell yeah, right? But why not just take the batteries out of your fire alarm? Now it doesn't hurt your ears when the house is burning down, but the house is still burning down. So we don't want to mask things. We want to fix things. So Tums, the safer version, that's just a little teaspoon of baking soda and some water. If you have an incidental flare or something like that, that's not the worst thing in the world, right? That's okay. Now, Tums aren't healthy. They have a bunch of chemicals in there too, but basically it's just baking soda with extra stuff so that they can patent and sell it to you. Now, H2 antagonists like Pepsid, they interfere with the acid or H2, and that has its own long-term problems too. Because again, if you're lowering the acid content so that you can keep eating these foods and having the stress that triggers it, well, now you're decreasing the acid, which decreases the oxidation of the iron, the breakdown of elements like calcium, magnesium, and not killing off the good or bad bacteria and viruses that end up getting trapped in your mucus and then slithering down all the way to your stomach acid to be destroyed to make a healthier immune system. Like now you're shutting all that down. Now what's even worse is proton pump inhibitors. Now just like statins, proton pump inhibitors have some of the highest long-term warnings from the pharmacopoeia, because you can't take these for very long. But if people keep eating this way and stressing this way, they're going to have chronic reflux. So it's never short term because they've never addressed why they have it in the first place. They just give them these proton pump inhibitors, which are azoles. So anything that ends with azole, that's a proton pump inhibitor. It blocks acid, but it also blocks the production. Now, it blocks the acid by 99.99%, right? Shuts it all down. But the same pumps that make acid also make intrinsic factor. Intrinsic factor is what binds to B12 so you can readily absorb that in the small intestine. And then B12, just like we do research at KU Medical School on proteogenomic psychiatry, on that methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase mutation, which we'll do a show about that pretty soon. That disrupts entire quality of life. So if you're not absorbing B12, then you don't convert amino acids into neurotransmitters like dopamine, epinephrine, norepinephrine, PEA, thyroid, melatonin, serotonin. And if you don't convert those, then they don't have the effect on your body and life starts to suck really bad. Not to mention, B12 decreases 50% of the homocysteine, which then prevents heart attacks and strokes as an independent factor for heart disease. And if you don't convert the homocysteine into methionine, well, now you don't make phosphatidylserine and phosphatidylcholine, which is alertness and brain function and memory. And then you don't make S-acetylhomocysteine, which then converts through B6 to make glutathione, so you can detoxify all the toxicity of your diet and lifestyle and environment. And so basically taking that proton pump inhibitor, it literally shuts down the B12 process, and then whole quality of life just goes to crap. And this is one of the places where you'll see like 20-year-olds getting fractures, and you'll see just young people even systematically falling apart. Because like we said in the beginning, just because the food goes through the donut doesn't mean it goes in the donut. So just because you eat healthy, you are basically shutting down the digestive process, and B12 and absorption and everything should just be awful for you. So people that fix this really get their life back, let alone not just shutting off a little pain here and there, right? So you can't take that long term, which then switches you back to what are you going to do to fix the problem in the first place. Now, you have kind of standard medical treatment for this, which is just shut the symptoms off, but you also have natural medicine, which is pretty much just how to live with the reflux better, right? So that's where like ginger and turmeric are great. They're COX-2 inhibitors. They block pain and inflammation. Now you feel better as you're damaging your esophagus. Something like licorice root's been used by everybody forever. Like it's a pretty old medicine. It's from the bark of a tree. You boil it down, and then that kind of like creates a coating, and then that coating feels better now, right? Especially if you have gastritis or something, or H. pylori overgrowth, which is secondary to taking proton pump inhibitors. So if you lower the acid, you don't kill off and manage the bacterial growth through that pH mechanism and through, can I remember the term? Quorum sensing and quorum quenching, which nobody talks about, but that's how you fix all the leaky gut and SIBO stuff anyways, right? So if you got H. pylori overgrowth, typically that's our focus with that, is just the quorum quenching and quorum sensing, which we'll talk about later. Always so much to talk about with this stuff. Now, outside licorice root, probiotics, because again, dysbiosis can kind of create an irritation too, but it's not really the main cause. And so sometimes that helps, but again, your probiotic supplement's going to be like 1 to maybe 35. You need 750 to 1,000 species of bacteria that live in you and on you. And you are only 1 part human cells and 100 times bacterial cells. Create a whole fog inside and out, which is good and helpful, but not always the reason that we have our reflux. It's not the standard there. And then herbal teas and chamomiles, adaptogens, those are good for calming down stress for people that have that sympathetic stimulation through stress, which is a lot of people. But that's still not changing things. Those are great. Adaptogens are one of the few things that you can take that will actually help your hormones without messing up your hormones. Otherwise, if you give people hormones, whether they're natural or bioidentical or vitamin D, you down-regulate their own production, and eventually nothing helps anymore. And they have to go back to lifestyle medicine. Quercetin's pretty good. Vitamin C is pretty good. Again, quercetin's knocking down pain, inflammation, which is helping it. Stinging nettle has long been used for this. So those things are helpful. That's a big part of natural medicine. Like I have 3 postdoctoral diplomates in clinical nutrition. That's always the focus, right? But at Harvard lifestyle medicine program that I took years ago, the focus is deeper. It's what are you doing to cause problems? Stop causing problems. You don't want to take supplements for the rest of your life. You don't want to take medications for the rest of your life. That's expensive and exhausting. You really just want to systematically know what causes it and then go through and make those changes. And then make sure it goes away and stays away. So let's see if there's anything else we're missing here. And if you guys have other topics, please let me know. We want to make sure this is meaningful for you. Oh yeah, 2 other things that we didn't talk about is overeating. So again, Americans overconsume about 75% too much food every year. Americans eat about 2,000 pounds of food a year. And the same as eating a whole Volkswagen bug every year, right? But that overconsumption stretches all the carbonated drinks and soda, stretches the stomach, and it pushes up against those sphincters. And if they are weakened from the diet and lifestyle, you are more likely to trigger those. So again, not the cause, but can definitely exacerbate the process. And then wearing super tight clothing, obviously you're still compressing the abdominal area, pushing everything upwards. And then it just exploits if you have wheat, dairy, sugar, MSG, chocolate, all those kind of things, or food sensitivities, to then push a little bit of acid out of there. So those are great, but again, still not the actual cause of this. They're just kind of contributing or exacerbating kind of factors here. So let me know if y'all have any questions. And otherwise, I look forward to doing more talks, and I think we're going to do maybe methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase mutations next week on the show. And otherwise, glad to see that you guys are here. Really appreciate you guys. I'll post this on Facebook too, which is where we've done it for the last 8 years. But we've got a channel on YouTube and trying to make that work. So we'll see how it all pans out here. But let me know if I can help you. Otherwise, I look forward to talking to you guys again. And have a good week. Bye-bye.